Hey guys, so I've been working in the fast food industry for the last couple of years, and let's just say customers and co-workers alike can be everything from wonderful, lovely people to being actually super rude to being downright weird. And I've got a couple stories about that I'm gonna share with you today. I'm not gonna name which stores I've been working in and also not which chains, just so that I can be sure that nobody can sue me over that. I'm gonna try to be chronological and say like this happened in the second store, this happened in the third store I've been working in. And if you don't know which chains those were, then you are probably never gonna know it, but it doesn't really matter, to be honest. So I don't actually have any stories from the first store I've been working at. So that brings us exactly to the second store, where the staff has been a bit more weird and not exactly helpful, to be quite honest. So let's give you one example of that. On one of my first working days, I was told to clean the bathroom. And since I didn't have any idea which cleaners they use, where they put the cleaners and all that, since I was new to the store, I was told to ask somebody. So I went with that guy to the cleaning room, or however they call it, where they like put all the cleaners and stuff. And first of all, he gave me a piece of cleaning cloth, and I think it was pink. And he said green. And I was like, but that's pink. And he was like, oh yeah, I don't know German. And I was like, but, I mean, no offense, honestly, but you should kinda know the colors. It's kinda important to like keep these cleaning cloths separated. So if you just say a random color because you don't know the name of the color, it just gives like major issues with communication, which is a huge problem. Like, especially sanitary wise, that's not good. But it got even weirder because then he just took a random cleaner and sprayed it on his hand, which is like not good for your hand, but alright, do what you want. Then he like smelled on his hand and just gave the cleaner to me and left to the bathroom. And I like looked at the cleaner and it was furniture polish, and I was like, what? So I went after him and I told him, that's furniture polish. And he was like, oh yeah, just spray it around. And I was like, no, that's furniture polish. That is not meant to use to clean the bathroom. And he just left the room being pissed, saying, just figure it out yourself. I was like, what? Another time I had to delete a product because a customer decided he didn't want the burger he told me he wanted. Which is fine, but I never did that, so I didn't know how to delete stuff out of the till. So I was just asking my coworker how to do that. And then he came and gave me the till card, which you need to do that. But he just gave it to me and walked away, and I was like, wait, I don't even know how to do that. And he just answered okay and walked away. Even the customers standing in front of me were laughing about that because they realized how unhelpful that was. And I was like, there's a drive-in story that I vividly remember because that was a bit outrageous. So I'm gonna give the two people in that story names now, just to make it more understandable. Let's say there was a guy driving into a drive-in. Let's call him Fred, I don't know. Fred was ordering something and he was trying to apply coupons, but they didn't work for some reason, so I just told him to come up front to the first window. Now the thing is, if you're working in drive-in and there's no one else in the same position, you have all the windows yourself. So you have like the electric thing where you like take on orders, but you also have the windows where they drive up and pay and get their food all at the same time. So it can be sometimes a bit stressful, and sometimes you already have 5 customers when somebody new is driving into a drive-in. So you're not always able to accept an order like in the first second anyway. That's like not really realistic in that sense. So I was trying to help Fred getting his coupons in, and then there was a new guy driving into the drive-in. And I was telling him that I'm currently busy helping a customer and I will be there for him in like 5 minutes. That guy was kind of impatient though, so like every second minute he started asking things like, oh, is anybody ever gonna serve me and stuff like that. And he was going more and more angry every time, and I was like, I can't help you right now, I have somebody up front, I am gonna help them now. But he was having none of that, so like after a couple of minutes he just drove up and was like standing behind Fred and started to honk angrily like 10 times a minute. I was like, what the hell is your problem? So I was figuring out how this coupons work in the last second. I just sent Fred up front to the parking lot and was telling him, yeah, wait there, we're gonna bring your food out. Just that angry guy could leave. And then he came and tried to talk to me, but I was just like, no, seriously no. I don't know what his problem was. He wanted to speak to my manager, who also just sent him away, which is already a good sign. Like, some people are just a bit too impatient, and if you're that impatient, you should maybe not go into like stores like that. Another customer story that I remember vividly is once we had like a group of British like teenagers, maybe young adults. I'm not sure if they were drunk, but they seemed like it. And then one of them was talking about my manager, and he was telling me to my face, tell her that I fancy her and that I want to lick her from head to toe. What on earth? That is like sexual harassment. So that brings us now to the third store, which I remember the best because that's only been like a couple of weeks ago that I still was working there. And that was the one with the funniest but also weirdest stories, to be quite honest with you. So for example, the managers there, at least some of them, often tended to be quite rude to customers. So there was, for example, one argument. I was ending my shift at that moment and I was coming like to the front of the store just to order something before I go home. And so we have this refill drink system where you like order like a cup and then you can refill it as much as you want to. But one customer, after he ordered his cup, like had his cup dropped down and somebody stepped on it, so it was broken. So he was coming to the till and was asking if he could have a replacement and was bringing his broken cup. And the manager working at that point was like, no, absolutely not, you have to buy a new cup, which is like $3-4, €3, which is like, why? It's just a paper cup, which is worth nothing. And also he's bringing like his last one, he's not even trying to get an extra cup. So I was like starting an argument, even though I wasn't working anymore, because I didn't see that as fair. And I don't know, my manager tried to explain himself with, oh yeah, it costs in production. Yeah, like 1 cent. Like, don't be so cheap. That is not necessary at all. But he was just getting mad about that. He was giving the customer's cup in the end, but he was getting mad at me and I was like, I don't care. I know I did the right thing here. So now let's talk about my favorite manager, which said the weirdest things I ever heard on a workplace. So, for example, on one day I was working in a drive-in and they didn't have either the TV screens or the cameras or both of them. I don't know, but they were installing them that day. So now we had a screen to actually see when somebody drives in, which is like very helpful and very much more comfortable. So he was coming up front and he was just telling me to tell him when there's a beautiful woman. And I was like, what? First of all, that's kind of subjective, so I'm not sure how I should like know who he finds beautiful. I was kind of wondering if he meant a specific person and was just wording himself weirdly, but that was also not the case. Because then he went on telling me that he used to prefer working on the drive-in just to stare at women, which is like, what? Who says that? Like, who talks like that in general? And who talks like that on a work environment? That is so inappropriate and so weird. And I was just having none of that, so I was turning around and having something to drink and rolling my eyes. And then he was like, oh, you're not into women? I was like, what? Can you just leave? Because I'm not sure what kind of conversation this is, but it shouldn't be happening. And that same guy, a bit later, that was also great. I was working at a till and serving some customers, and then he was calling me to the back, and I was like, what the hell is going on now? And he just called me there to ask me to get him the number of a customer, like the phone number. And I was like, what on earth? How unprofessional is that question even? And I'm not gonna do that because I'm not gonna get trouble for trying to ask somebody for their phone number for you. Like, what is up with you? And the thing is, a lot of the people that worked in the store are exactly like that. So for example, once I had like 10 customers in the drive-in. And I'm gonna explain how the drive-in works in that store a bit later, so you can understand how I could even have 10 customers. But some people were bringing the food out to me. And then one of my co-workers came back in again, and he literally told me, "You haven't told me that she's so hot." I'm like, what? Like, what? I have no words for statements like that. Like, can you be a bit more professional at work? Maybe? Is that possible? And the last story I remember from that category is I was once like doing fries or something for people that were on the till, and then one of my co-workers came up to me and he was like, "Treat yourself." And I was like, "What?" And he just continued saying "treat yourself" and had no idea what he wants from me. He was constantly like showing towards the till, and I was like, "What do you want from me?" And then like after the 5th time he said, "Treat yourself to that pearl," which is like, it's hard to translate from German, but pearl is basically a derogatory term for women, which basically calls them an object. So I'm generally against people who use that term in any way, because no. Now let's talk about customers and like the way they act towards you sometimes. So the thing is, fries, drinks, ice cream, that kind of stuff is always a bit of an issue with me, because I always think the amount you get for the price you pay is a little too low. So I actually make them always extra full, and I've been told so many times that I give like customers too much in all the stores I've been working in. So when you start to complain about that to me, then we get a bit of an issue, to be quite honest. So for example, once I was like having 2 people that wanted ice cream, and I sent them up front because I had so many customers again, and then I brought ice cream outside, and they were checking them, and then they were like, "Oh, they're not full." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, but they're double as full as they would be with anybody else working there." And they were just like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna give a bad rating." Yeah, do that if you feel great with it, but you're not gonna get more ice cream from me in any case. And then I also had like this one lady who, like, there were a group of people, but I was practically only talking to her. And I was doing like their drinks first and packing their food already. And then I started complaining about the drinks being not full enough. And I'm like honestly, the machine fills them up to the point they need to be filled up. There's always the same amount of drink coming out when I press the button. But I was anyway just taking the cups back and making them more full so they could be happy. And then they were driving up front and I was like, "Hey, I'm bringing your food out in a minute." And then 2 minutes later, when I brought their food out, they were like, "Oh, now you're not in time anymore. Now we want free ice cream." And I was like, what? Like, are you serious? You just spent 3 minutes arguing about the drinks being not full enough. Of course I'm not in the 2.5 minute time frame anymore. That is, like, what is your problem? And then she was like, "Oh, it's not my fault, but you're too stupid to press the right button." Are you serious right now? Like, what on earth? I was just telling my manager, and she was like, "Yeah, fuck them," kinda. So they didn't get anything for free. Another story comes actually from one of my first days in that particular store. So there was this one guy who ordered wings, and then he wanted sauce with that, which you gotta pay extra. He was complaining about that, which is like, "I'm sorry, I'm not gonna lose my job over giving you free sauce when you can't pay like 30 cents for them." Then he was trying to give me a tip, which is already like, I didn't make you happy, so why would you do that? And then I was like, "We don't accept tips," which, like, we're literally not allowed to do that. And also nobody ever gives a tip in those kind of stores, so what? And also, if you want to give me a tip, why don't you just pay for your sauce instead with the same money? Like, I don't get your issue. And then he was complaining about the fact that I'm so into rules and I should think about that at home. I was like, either pay for your sauce or leave me alone, because I have no idea what you're trying to say here, to be quite honest with you. Another general thing about customers actually is I have a problem with the way they try to gender toys in like Happy Meals and that kind of stuff. So like at least half the time when you have parents that want like the kids meal for their kids and you ask them what toy they want, they only tell you, "Oh, it's a boy," or "Oh, it's a girl." congratulations, I still don't know which toy you want. Like, I'm not supporting the idea of only giving pink things to, like, girls and blue things to boys. And also, like, some of the toy ranges don't even work like that. So, for example, when you have Pokemons, how on earth would you gender Pokemons? That doesn't even make sense. Like, that's beyond me. Or, like, once we had Snoopy for, like, a month, and people still just told me the gender of their child, and I'm like, all of them are the same dog. How am I gonna gender that even if I wanted to? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And once, I remember vividly, there was like this argument where this girl wanted like a toy car, and her mother was having an argument with her daughter for over 10 minutes because she was only allowed to have like a Barbie kind of thing. But she didn't, she wanted a car, and the mother was like, no, that's for boys. And I was like, are you serious right now? In which year do we live in again? Because the last time I checked, things like that didn't matter, but I guess they do matter again. Now, lastly, I've got a few things to complain about generally that have nothing to do with the customers or the managers, but there's a few flaws in the system. So for example, the drive-in in the third store I worked in is kind of a mess. You only have like 2.5 minutes from the point somebody drives in until he drives away with all of his food. So that's already like kind of a crazy time frame if you think about the fact that only like 4 types of burgers are pre-made and the rest has to be made after being ordered. So that's not realistic. So what we usually do is like we take the order, have them pay, and then having them drive into the parking lot so we can bring the food out. Now that could work fine, but when there's like 6, 7, 8 people right after each other, you have an issue because you can't prepare the food because you have to accept the next one because the time already counts. So that's becoming a mess over the time, and that's getting worse and worse and worse actually. And then you have the people starting to come in because they waited 5 minutes and they start to complain that they had to wait 5 minutes, and you're like, I have 5 new people coming in that have to accept I cannot bring any food out, but I'm still getting shouted at for that. And I'm like, that is just how the system is built up on, which makes no sense at all. Another issue that this store had was cancelling products. So in the first 2 stores I worked in, which was a different chain, you could just easily cancel product, add product, change product, stuff like that. So that was no biggie. But the problem in that store was you couldn't. So if somebody wants like a cheeseburger, but they change their mind and want a chicken burger, you cannot just change that. You have to get like the manager card and cancel the whole thing and then order new. So if somebody wants 10 products but suddenly decides to change something, you have to cancel everything to change that. And also we get angry managers that like tell us, oh yeah, we are like so bad workers because we had to cancel something. But it's not even our fault if somebody says something wrong or wants to change something. So I'm not sure how that system is supposed to work, but that makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm such a mess that I completely forgot to film anything for an outro or anything of that sort, so I guess here it is now. It would really help me if you like and subscribe. And I can only promise that my content will get more organized the more I get comfortable with being on camera. I got a lot more stories, but a lot of them are more like linked with travel and that kind of stuff. So, and if you're interested in that area, then you should maybe stay tuned for future videos, because they're gonna be less about every day, at least if it's story time.